before the cemetery. Before the crooked crosses and the iron gate that groans when touched. There was a forest standing heavy over that land, dense and old and darker than it should have been even in full daylight. And on a summer wedding night filled with music and wine and careless laughter, the bride stepped away from the celebration to breathe and never returned, while the groom mounted his white horse and rode after her into the trees, lantern swinging from the saddle, the last flicker of light swallowed by branches that seemed to close behind him. By morning, the horse stood alone at the edge of the forest, reins twisted tight, foam dried along its neck as if it had run hard through something unseen. And 2 days later, they found the bride at the base of a massive oak, dressed tangled in roots like the earth itself had tried to keep her, eyes open to a sky she would never see again. And a week after that, the groom was discovered hanging from that same tree, rope cutting into bark directly above the place where she had lain. And soon after, the forest began to rot from within, branches splitting without wind, leaves falling out of season, until the trees were cut down and a cemetery was built exactly where the oak once stood, as if burying the land could silence whatever had taken root there. We were children when we first walked through that gate, not because we believed the story, but because we wanted to prove it could not reach us. And on the night we saw the horse, the air was thick and unmoving, insects screaming in the field until they stopped all at once, as if sound itself had been switched off. And there it stood at the edge of the road, white against the dark, like something carved from moonlight. Perfectly still, not grazing, not shifting, only watching. It turned slowly and walked between the graves, and we followed with nervous laughter that felt wrong in our throats, pushing open the gate that creaked once and then fell silent, stepping into a cemetery where the world seemed to thin, and the horse moved ahead of us with steady, deliberate steps until it passed behind a tilted stone and simply vanished, not running, not bolting, but gone. And when we looked down, the dust held our footprints clearly pressed into it, scattered and fresh. Yet between the gate and the center of the graves, there was not a single hoof print. Not one broken patch of earth, nothing to suggest that weight had ever touched that ground. And then came the sound behind us. A single sharp strike of hoof on stone, followed by a cold breath against the back of my neck that did not belong to wind. And in that suspended second, I understood the horse was not wandering. It was not searching. It was waiting. Years later, I returned alone, telling myself memory exaggerates fear, telling myself children imagine what adults cannot explain. And the cemetery seemed smaller until I reached the center where the oak once stood and saw pressed deep into the dust a single perfect hoofprint, sharply defined, recent, surrounded by untouched soil as if something had stepped down from the air and touched earth exactly once. And as I stared at it, the silence thickened until it felt solid. And behind me came the slow dragging whisper of fabric across dry ground, steady and deliberate, close enough that I could almost feel it brush my hand. And I did not turn, because if I turned and saw the white shape crossing toward the road, it would no longer be a story but a confirmation. And when the whisper passed beside me and faded, I heard something else. A low, heavy exhale just behind my shoulder, not human, deep and patient like a horse standing inches away. And I walked out without looking back, because I realized something the old people never said aloud. The bride crosses the road searching for the moment she disappeared, and the horse appears before her not to guide her, but to mark where she is about to be seen. And one day, if the timing is right, someone will slow down just enough to meet both of them in the headlights, not moving, not crossing, just standing there, waiting.